Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
And this is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a movie, then we talk about it. It's really that simple. This is actually a bonus episode of sorts. Not a Patreon bonus episode, that's something you get on Patreon for $1 or more. This is an episode where we have a new vote on Patreon where an option from this show goes up against an option from the Streams podcast, which is the horror movie podcast, and 121 in Flux. And we had the victory this month, if you will. There was 3 Vincent Price movies up. One that was more of a horror movie in this one, and we'll talk about how much of a horror movie this kind of is as well when we get into it. And also Basil the Great Mouse Detective, which was the one that I did with Connor, if that one. So this is The Last Man on Earth, though. This is Vincent Price take on the I Am Legend story from 1964. I say his take. He didn't direct it, but yes. What's your question?
Did we win or did the movie win?
Well, are you saying we lost because we had to do an extra episode? Is that what you're saying?
No. I just want to know, do the people really like us?
I mean,
I know they like you because you're in all of them, but do they like me? That's what I want to know.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm
happy to do this.
Yes. I'm willing to say at the very least Connor's last place.
I don't know. I probably would have voted for The Great Mouse Detective.
Hey, I'm not very complain about watching that movie again, alright? I love that movie. But best 2D animated Disney film, don't at me. So
I mean, it's good.
Yeah. So it was funny is I loved that movie long before I knew who Vincent Price was. So when I discovered Vincent Price later in life, you know, his old horror movies and stuff, I was like, I know this voice. Where did I know this voice from? It was Racking.
Right. He's the villain.
He's the villain. Yeah, he's a villain in Basil. So he's the Moriarty to the Basil's Sherlock. But we're not here to talk about Basil the Great Mouse Detective, although clearly one day I should. We're here to talk about The Last Man on Earth, which, as I said, is the... I didn't actually check it's the first, but I assume it's the first adaptation, the first movie of the I Am Legend story, which of course later would be done again by Charlton Heston in The Omega Man, and then I think most recently with Will Smith in I Am Legend, which actually uses the title. So
never seen him.
Naturally, I think because we're doing this one, we're probably inclined to slot those two in at some point in the relative near future, later this year sometime. This first one is fresh in our heads. And so yeah, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you warning before we go into the spoilers, and yeah, we'll get into it. The premise of this is really quite simple. The title kind of gives part of it away. Vincent Price is left alone on Earth, except people who have been changed, altered by a virus. I'm not going to lie, a lot of talk about pandemics and viruses in this felt very oddly timely. I was like, oh, this feels very, very all of a sudden just entrenched in what we're going through. But yeah,
Still can't say it, huh?
Sorry?
Still can't say it? You can't say the word?
I don't think so. I think YouTube still demonetizes you for using the word.
Okay.
We can say pandemic, we can say virus, we can call it Eileen, which has been the favourite substitute recently. But because the other name rhymes with... You can sing it to the tune of Come On Eileen.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Carr came up with it, not me, alright? There was an easy substitute. So, you've got that stuff. One of the elements, though... Written
by Laszlo Cravenswood, right?
Indeed. I just watched that episode this week from What We Do in the Shadows.
Okay, stop dilly-dallying.
Yeah, stop dilly-dallying. Yes, we'll keep it on topic. But now all I can hear in my head is stroke your... And I'm not going to finish the sentence, but that's all I can hear in my head now. So
it's a good show.
Such a good show. Anyway, so he's the last man on Earth, and he's surviving day to day, but the people who have transformed because of the virus have essentially transformed into vampires. And that word is used, although I'm going to dispute how vampire they really are and what they're actually more like. But that's a debate. And typically, if something's got vampires in it, that'll just immediately be, that's a Streams After Midnight movie. We don't even think about it. The reason why...
I wasn't expecting vampires at all.
Yeah, that's fair. The reason why this falls into science fiction is A, because I think it's equally sci-fi anyway, because of the post-apocalyptic idea, because of the virus. There's a lot of sci-fi elements to this. but more so because the other versions of this story that will come later, Omega Man and I Am Legend, from my memory, both of those lean more towards sci-fi. So it makes more sense for us to do this if we're going to do the later versions to keep it intact, because I think this is the one with the most vampire-y, or at least in the sense that, like, we've got garlic, the reflections, daylight. You know, when the daylight thing does stick around. Actually, I remember that from I Am Legend. But you know, like that, the fact that they're being staked through the heart, like this is definitely the most vampire ones.
Weaknesses, and plus they use the word vampire in the movie.
They do, yeah. They literally use the word vampire. What's funny to me though is that they actually act more like zombies for the most part.
Yes.
Because
this is before zombies as we know them in cinema.
Yeah, this is 4 years before Romero essentially invented the modern zombie. So I think it's quite interesting that they actually are more reminiscent of that than they are of any other vampire that I've ever seen. There's also
some clear inspiration, I think.
Yeah, they also don't seem to actually bite anyone, really.
Yeah, there is a scene at the end where it looks like there's one on a girl's neck.
Yeah, but there's never like any mention of
there's no bite marks.
Yeah, there's never any mention of them needing blood to survive or anything like that.
No.
So
it does seem more like zombies where they're just trying to kill whatever's alive.
Yeah, they do speak though. They've got some sort of limited speaking capacity, so it's kind of more zombies. But if anything, it's just like they wanted a really specific weird take on vampires in this, and it just happened to turn out to be a lot like what zombies ended up becoming.
Yeah, I mean, both die and then come back to life.
Oh, they're both undead. Yeah, you describe both zombies and vampires as undead. They're just different types of undead. So.
Yeah, these just have vampire rules as far as how you kill them.
It's kind of like how in Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf, starring Red Brown of...
yes,
you know
I'm
Red
familiar.
Brown. You're familiar with Red Brown.
Yes.
So he's in that with Christopher Lee, and obviously it's a werewolf movie because it's Howling 2. But see, when you actually watch that movie...
Christopher Lee together.
I know. And at one point, Christopher Lee's wearing these like 80s shades, you know, the visor shades at one point. It's a hell of a movie. But at one point... or once you watch that movie, you realize as you're watching it that this was clearly a script for a different movie that was clearly meant to be a vampire movie, that they just changed the word vampire to werewolf every single time it came up, because all the rules...
Even Christopher Lee's in it, so
exactly.
He's Dracula.
Like, for some reason, it's not silver bullets in this movie, it's wooden stakes. For some reason, they go to a castle in Transylvania. Like, what? Like, it's just, this was clearly meant to be vampires, but you just changed it, you know, without much effort. It's werewolves now, so, yeah. So, and werewolves, are, they're the least undead of the three, but they definitely feel like they're the same sort of genre, I would say.
Yeah.
They feel like the same sort of set of sort of things. But anyway, so there's kind of vampires, right? That's kind of the thing. So there's a good discussion to have about the real title, I Am Legend, and how it compares to like the newer film and whatnot. To a point, I'll hold that back a little bit because we'll definitely do the newer films later. But
yeah, well, good, because I haven't seen it. So
exactly,
I don't
yeah.
have much to say.
But there's one point that I do want to bring up because this movie is, as far, I mean, I have to admit, I've seen the Omega Man. I don't remember it that well though, so I can't say for certain how that one tackles it. But this one, as far as the title goes, by the title I mean I Am Legend of the original story. This is the one that actually I think the most faithfully actually has the reason for it in the movie.
Okay, yeah, I mean they bring it up in the film, and I caught it.
Yeah, because
I think it's interesting that it's called The Last Man on Earth and not I Am Legend. And I don't know if you thought of this, probably did, but did you think about the pilot episode of Twilight Zone?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can see the comparisons. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that, but like when he goes into that store and he's like the last man on Earth, it's called Where Is Everybody? It's just a guy seemingly who's the last person on Earth, and he goes into a bookstore or some kind of store with books on it, and every book is called The Last Man on Earth.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I didn't think of that as I was watching it. I'm honest. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought of that. That, and it's interesting because the book is written by Richard Matheson, who also wrote a ton of Twilight Zone episodes that we've watched.
What, the I Am Legend books written by Richard Matheson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it feels very Twilight Zone in a lot of ways, just kind of extended out. It's
Sure.
right. It's right in that era as well. Like season 5 of Twilight Zone would have been airing when this came out. Like this, it's right around that time. So the movies, it's just it's this weird oddity. You don't get a lot of films that are shot in the widescreen 2:3:5:1, but are in black and white. Because typically when they started shifting to that, then everything basically would switch to color. So it's kind of an interesting mix of formats.
There is a colorized version of the film that you can watch, though.
Yes, but I would rather cut off my toes.
Okay.
So to stick back to Last Man on Earth, I've not even asked you the question yet, which is telling of how tangential this review has been so far. But Sarah, how do you feel about The Last Man on Earth?
Yeah, I like it. It's pretty good. I don't think it's like a masterpiece or anything, but it's, for the most part, it's pretty good. I was surprised that it came out before Night of the Living Dead. I was watching it. And I like Vincent Price a lot, and I think it's hard for an actor to be the only person on screen for so long and to act against himself, but he does a pretty good job. Though I don't know if I love him in the role, but that's okay. He's still good in it.
Yeah, he's kind of the star of the time that they wanted to put him, put in there. I feel like, because I like the movie too, I kind of agree with your assessment that it's pretty good. It's not amazing or like a masterpiece, or, I think there's a reason why it's not like as super remembered as other movies from the 60s. And maybe why you don't get nerds every 5 minutes saying, "Who, Night of the Living Dead ripped off Last Man on Earth?" Which, for the record, I don't really think he did. I just...
there might be some inspiration. I don't know about rip-off,
but it's... I think Vincent Price is good. It uses a lot of narration. It's got a kind of a weird structure, actually, I think, because this is the second time I've seen it. And
yeah, I like the structure. I was gonna
you like it? Oh,
yeah, I like that you get thrown in and in his like daily routine, and then you get like flashbacks as to what happened and how we ended up here.
So let me ask you this though: do you like the fact that it is literally one extended 35-minute flashback?
Oh yeah, it's a long flashback. You're right.
Because it's not like it's different flashbacks. It's it just goes back to the earliest point in the timeline and then continues from there. And then when it gets to the very end of that story, it cuts back to present day, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Maybe if it was cut up a little bit more, it would have been, the pacing would have been strange, but I didn't mind.
Did you get confused when he was watching home movies of his dead wife and child, and he wasn't doing the dialogue with it? Yes, before someone corrects me, I know that there was no audio on the home movies because it was a 1964 like home film camera. They're pretty primitive. Okay, I get it. I was just cracking a joke.
I was confused why there was so much stock footage mixed in of Circus mixed in with with his family.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty egregious effect, I thought, because how like sometimes, especially in like movies that aren't, it's not like a problem now so much, but if you go back even just like 15-20 years, you get to this point where anytime there's a character watching a TV screen, right, the image on the TV screen is added in later, so it looks kind of unnatural and just sort of like as if it's plastered on instead of actually playing through the TV. This has that effect, but it's a projector he's using, so it looks especially fake because it's this perfect square that looks high quality, and I'm like, yeah, this is not how a projector looks.
Yeah.
Especially in a brightly lit room, so that's a weird little, not a problem, just a little amusing observation.
Yeah.
I'm going to fault it for it. But there's a lot of narration. I do feel like one of the benefits of like a modern version of the story, and that's not to give my opinion of I Am Legend, because I will not say what I think about that movie, but it's definitely not a clear cut answer either way, is that
no opinion.
I feel like, because you've not seen it, obviously, but I feel like a modern take in this, I think, would actually try and make it work without narration, and would just have the the quiet visual storytelling of the character on their own. And it's one of the things, I think, we talked about that first Twilight Zone episode when we were doing Twilight Zone reviews. I think we said that about that as well, that a modern version of the story would probably try their best to not have him talking to himself constantly, because that it almost takes you out of it because it's a little bit fake. I mean, admittedly, he's not talking to himself in this, it's narration, it's a little bit different, but just to no, let's just make it quiet because that's kind of interesting. You know, it's the don't breathe, not don't breathe. Sorry,
Sure.
A Quiet Place. That was the. I mean, don't breathe
Right,
kind of works
right.
as well actually because they have to be quiet, but still, it's a difference.
Or I was thinking, just because I had watched the movie recently, All Is Lost, the Robert Redford movie, where he's out on a boat, and it's a movie like where he's on a boat in the ocean by himself, and he never speaks like the whole movie. He's just
Oh,
the ship is sinking, and he's just out there struggling for his life, and he stays calm the whole time, and he never speaks. There's not like one line of dialogue in the whole film because he's alone,
that
and
sounds
it's like his
like.
best performance.
Is it good? Because this sounds great.
um, I would say it's close to great, but it's pretty good. It's
Okay.
worth a watch.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. I'll have to look into it. Uh, so
But that's more of a modern day version of like not having a movie where it's just one person on
mm,
screen and he's not talking to anybody or narrating over
because
it, and it works pretty well.
it does feel a little bit like a crutch, and you feel like modern movies would like to rise to the challenge and say no, we don't have to do that. We can think of inventive ways. We can do things visually to tell the story that will make it engaging, keep it engaging, and so on. So but that's obviously this movie's of its time, and it's not really a complaint so much. It's just that this is an observation of how things have changed and how I would like this story to be tackled if it's done now, or this type of isolated
Mhm.
person. So yeah, no, I think it's good. The structure's a bit weird for me. I'm not sure I like that it's one big clump in the middle because it makes the movie very distinct. Like there's like 20-30 minutes of like what his life is like, and then like
Mhm.
35 minutes of this flashback, and then the last 25 minutes of like the actual plot. Basically, is
Right.
essentially how
That's
it breaks
true.
down.
But
So
I found each part to be pretty interesting, and
mm,
I liked the flashback, and I liked once I got into that part of the film, I was just like, all right, I'm just going to go with it. This is what the second act is. I guess we're getting the whole previously on The Last Man on Earth, and it was, I don't know, it still worked for me because it allowed me to like care about the characters in his life, which was really effective, much more so than the characters that we get later on that we're supposed to get attached to.
oh sure, yeah, I think that's fair. I because it's such an obvious thing to say, but I feel like a movie now would probably cut back and forth from
Oh,
the
definitely.
flashback
Yeah.
timeline and what's going on, and it might actually mean that you don't have to have the narration in the stuff when he's on his own because
Yeah, to getting answers from
yeah,
the flashback.
there's other scenes sort of interspersed as well, so it's not like it's going to be quiet for too long at a time as well. So yeah, there'd be benefits to it, but this is the choice they made, and um, it does have some interesting ideas at the end. I do think the reason why it's called I Am Legend, the original story, is quite interesting. I don't know if the movie goes far
Hmm.
enough with it to really sell it to me, but I do like the idea itself.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Uh, and the final kind of like set piece chase, I'll call it, is pretty entertaining. And yeah, so it's yeah, but I think ultimately why I would say it's definitely more science fiction beyond the fact that it's just post-apocalyptic and its genre is that the vampires don't actually feel that vampire-y. Outside of the fact, despite the fact
Hmm.
they have all the rules of a vampire, they don't actually feel like vampires at all. And
Hmm.
secondly, the actual sort of like not quite the twist, but what the plot kind of turns it into by the end makes it feel much less of a horror story, at least in the traditional sense. And on top of that, I think the story of the virus spreading and the way they're reacting to it feels a lot more like a science fiction story of a virus spread than it does a horror
So are
movie.
we going to be doing 28 Days Later also then?
That's unfair. What?
That's more of a horror movie.
That is more of a horror movie. Uh, Especially that last act's pretty horrific, but that's besides the point.
Ooh. Hot
I,
takes.
I have always been of the opinion that 20 Days Later is a good 2 acts, and then the third act's a bit on the shaky side. I've never liked the
Save it
ending.
for the review.
I'll save it. I've not watched it in years, so I mean, a lot of it will be fresh. Uh, but I was actually, we were doing Hellraiser 4 on Screams this week, and I was like, man, should I get Tara in to guest on this? Because this movie starts in space, on a space station in the future.
Yeah, but so many horror franchises
I
have a
know.
space movie.
I know. You should have been in Leprechaun 4.
Way down in the line.
Yeah. Leprechaun 4 and Jason X, you should have been guested on those as a crossover episode.
I wouldn't have said no.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get to spoilers? Like any other facets?
Yeah. No, not really. I mean, I sort of hated in the beginning when the credits popped up because it's immediate, like, The Last Man on Earth, starring Vincent Price and these 16 people.
Yeah.
What?
To be fair, though, flashbacks were always an option. So
Right. Yeah. And there are, zombie vampires, which I didn't know about when the movie started, so I was a bit confused.
Now, to be fair, though, it is easy to be cynical as you're watching this, saying, oh, he's not really the last man on Earth, is he? But when you get to the ending, it actually makes a dramatic point that makes the title true, technically.
Right.
So, fair play.
Well, I like the title I Am Legend also, because of the ending of the film.
No, I do too. I think I Am Legend makes a lot of sense.
I understand why they would have changed it, though, just because I Am Legend, it's kind of vague of what type of movie you're getting, but The Last Man on Earth, you're like, I know exactly what this movie's going to be about.
Yeah. Although arguably, it's not as much as you think. So, because I feel like Last Man on Earth, I expect someone more isolated. I've definitely seen movies where a character's like the last person and they're far more isolated for most of the movie than this is, for sure. So... Yeah. Sure,
yeah. But, I mean, which one's going to get butts and seats?
True. Well, I mean, Will Smith got butts and seats, I suppose. I mean, that's...
Not mine.
Well, apparently not, yeah.
But it also came out at a time where I just wasn't really watching films. I was in the military.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually, do you know what's weird about that? Because that movie's set in 2012, and it came out in, like, 2007. There's like a weird Easter egg on the adverts in Times Square. There's a poster, but it's the logo from the comics, but it was a Superman Batman poster, and it's really funny that Batman v Superman came out just a couple of years later than that. So I feel like if I watch it again now, I'm going to look at that and go like, oh,
it's your fault.
So they should actually go back in and edit in Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman.
Maybe they're trying to tell us that the Snyder cut is what leads to the apocalypse, so maybe we should release it.
Exactly, yes. I can get behind that thinking. I can get behind that. So, all right, well, in that case, we'll get to spoilers there because we're dancing around talking about plot details then. So, Last Man on Earth, full spoilers in from this point on, but I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So, thank you to David Short, Tyler Hess, Alison Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, and Board Now. So thank you to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
They're all $20 patrons and up. But you don't have to be a $20 patron, do you, Tara?
Well, I know if you want to support the show, you can check out the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MomFuzzTV. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of The Ace. So you get more of this. You can get the Transfer Saga. We have some gems in there like Time Cop. And some David Carradine specials like Death Sport and Future Force, all sorts of gems. So check that out for a $1 donation. You get access to all of that. At the $5 donation, you get these episodes a day early.
Yes, day early. You're good. You were right the first time. Believe in yourself. I believe in you. You can do this.
And you can vote once a month on what movie we're going to watch next. And Yep.
You're good.
Yep, that's good. That's it.
That's it.
I did it. Thank you.
I'm done. It's over. Thank you. I'm done. All right.
I'm out. And of course, this is the $10 tier, right? This movie.
Yes, that's true. There is a $10 vote where it pits movie options from different shows against each other. But I'm not cruel enough to make you do that as well. So
I brought it up anyway, since we're doing the bonus.
Yeah, the 1 and the 5 are obviously the more common tiers for people to take, so that's why I especially plug those ones. But anyway, yes, Last Man on Earth. So the first 25-30 minutes, it's easy to take this one in chunks because it neatly divides into 3 chunks. So the first chunk is basically him waking up. He's got a little alarm clock, and it's been 3 years since the apocalypse happened, and he gets up, and his narration tells us that, oh, another day to survive, better get started. And he goes, and you sarcastically messaged me when you were watching this, saying, hey, if you were the last person on Earth, would you set an alarm clock? And all I could think was, well, yeah, but the people who want to kill him don't come out during the day, so yes.
I didn't know that. I just assumed it was the last man on Earth. Wake up, Vincent Price, to alarm clock. Like, why set an alarm clock? Like, are you waking up for work?
I mean, if daylight's important to what you have to do for survival reasons, then I guess you would have to set an alarm clock. So you maximize your daylight every day, I suppose, would be my guess. But as a fair comment.
Probably he doesn't get a whole lot of good rest either, because someone's always banging on his windows and doors, shouting his name.
Yeah, if I've got like some critiques of the idea, there's a couple of shoddy elements, and the idea that like all these vampire zombies can't get into his simple boarded up house, even though they've been trying every night for what seems like years. It feels a little bit.
He says they're like incredibly weak.
Yeah, that's true. He does say that. So, but you know, it sets up this idea, and he's like, "Oh, my garlic's ran out. It doesn't have any scent anymore." And he puts a mirror on the front of the door as well, because they can't stand their own reflection. It's not that they can't see themselves; it's that they just can't stand seeing the reflection. And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to get some more." And he goes to like a store, and like goes to the garlic that he's got stored in the freezer in this big store, and he's like, "Oh, there's a lot here. It's in good condition, but you know, I'll just take what I need." And he takes a basket of it, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, surely that garlic coming, because it's been 3 years, right? So like, and if he's not getting this himself and growing it himself, then
yeah, that garlic should be just as fresh as what's on the door, I guess.
Yeah. Well, actually, what's stuck out to me,
growing new garlic out of it.
When he's talking about like eating, he's like, "Oh, eating is not pleasurable anymore," and like, I just do it to survive now. It's just a chore to survive. But this morning I'll settle for coffee and orange juice. And I went, wait, orange juice? Where are you getting fresh orange juice 3 years after the apocalypse?
Maybe it's Tang.
I mean,
maybe it's powdered orange juice.
Has he got an orchard out the back? He's growing his own oranges? Like, yeah, okay, sure. Sure, okay, coffee as well technically would run out eventually, but I buy that there's like, coffee keeps for a lot longer though. I buy that there's coffee beans around for me to get for a long time.
Yeah, coffee is so processed already.
Yeah, but oranges don't last for like forever. Like fruit goes off.
That's true. You have to have your own tree.
Yeah, it's almost like they didn't put too much thought into like what would still be around and what would work and so on kind of thing.
Yeah, unless it's like a powdered one, or if it's just like in a can. I mean, because canned food lasts a long time.
Yeah, because
canned orange juice.
They do answer how he has power, because he's got a generator and he's using gas for it. And I buy that, you know, he's next to a city. Like, if he's the only person using anything, yeah, there's probably enough gas that he can just take from the stations that'll last for a while.
Like, I'm sure the food wouldn't have run out. Like,
oh, you'll have tons of food.
Canned food and.
Oh yeah. Canned food and like, you know, stuff like that.
Triscuits.
Yeah, tons of that. How long does rice keep? Does rice keep for a while? I feel like it would.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it would. Yeah, so he's got a lot of food options for sure. And if anything, I'm like, where's all the cars? Like, he keeps driving about on all these empty roads, and I'm like, wouldn't there be just cars like scattered all over the place? Like,
I guess. I mean, people get sick and then they die, so
true.
They wouldn't be driving and then die.
That's fair. I suppose that's fair. I guess what I'm saying is that, like, yeah, there's not like a lot of like super egregious things that stick out, but it also kind of feels like it doesn't necessarily address a lot of things as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of like, oh, he's got a generator, he gets a couple of supplies like this, and that's about it. There's not a whole lot there. He visits the church occasionally, and he goes and picks up a new mirror, you know, at the mirror store. Which is what it looks like. It doesn't look like a mirror section in a bigger store. It looks like a little just store with lots of mirrors in it. Very specialized.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. Maybe that's the thing. I don't know. I've never been to a mirror store.
They probably do somewhere. Like, I know there's a store in Edinburgh which is literally just a Christmas store, and it's open all year. You can go in and buy Christmassy stuff all year. And
they must have some great sales.
Well, I think the reason why it survives is because it's right in the city centre, so it's very touristy in Edinburgh. I think the idea is that tourists go in and get something for Christmas later that year. They're like, oh, we'll get like a Scottish Christmas ornament for our tree.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's how they survive the rest of the year, is that people just get things for later. Because they're only there for, short bursts of time. That said, they're probably suffering right now, admittedly. Right now it's not looking so hot.
Not a lot of tourists.
No, not a lot of tourists. Not a lot of people thinking about shopping for Christmas ornaments right now either, I have to imagine.
Mm-mm. Who wants to remember this year anyway?
I know. Everyone's trying to forget most of it. So, remember when, like, The Invisible Man came out? And remember when... What else happened in February? There wasn't a lot. February feels like a world away now at this point.
Yeah. Emma. Emma came out. Didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird time.
The last movie I saw in the theater was Call of the Wild.
Actually, can we talk about how he has like a device that he set up to actually whittle steaks like really accurately? Because he's got all these perfectly shaped steaks that are like these like cones.
Yeah. It's for making like candles and stuff, or candle holders, but he's using it to make just steaks. Yeah,
it's really, really neat stuff. So what's interesting about this part though is that, after we see him do a couple of things, there's a montage of him, because we see he's got like a grid up in his wall with a map, and he's basically searching through street to street, killing all of the vampire zombies during the day, because then he kills as many as he can when he's got time in the middle, after he's done all these other chores. And we get this montage of him doing it, and I think what's interesting, even at this point in the movie, it treats it like he's the bad guy. Like, these people who are getting killed, these vampire zombies, are like sort of waking up and going like, ah, and they're like, they're scared, and it feels like you're the bad guy here. Like, these people are terrified of you.
He's doing it for survival though, right? Like, they're vampires.
I mean, in theory, but that's kind of where the movie goes though, is that he assumes that he has to do all this, but then it turns out that not really, at least not to this extent.
Right.
And we'll get into that when we get to that last chunk. But even at this point, you can kind of see the seeds for that idea kind of poking in there.
I think I don't quite buy Vincent Price as a survivor in the role. That's why I think maybe it would have been better with, I don't want to say someone younger. I don't want to be ageist, but like, just like his mannerisms and stuff, he doesn't come off as somebody who would do anything to survive to me.
I guess we see what you're saying. What you're saying is Charlton Heston and the Omega Man feels like better casting.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see
Heston's
that.
a survivor.
I could see that. Yeah. So the last chunk of this part of this chunk is that he does go back one night and sleeps again. We sort of see that they do bang in the doors and stuff, and he just kind of drowns them out with music, almost mockingly. He puts on music and just sort of drinks as he listens to some classical music. But the second day that he's out, he's at the church and he falls asleep at the church, and it's like already nighttime. Although I will say there was a couple of shots here where the day for night was kind of unconvincing and felt like it was still daytime. But he has to race home and sort of fight off some vampires to get into the house. And this is the night where he watches the home movies, and it's when he's watching the home movies where we flash back to the birthday parties where he was taking these home movies, and this is back when apparently Europe's already fallen to the plague. And they're talking about how is it spreading with wind? Is it going to come over because of wind? And
come over to America.
Do you know what's so funny about this is that I think
that it's in Italy. No,
I wasn't thinking that. No, is it? I probably wouldn't have questioned this that much before, but because of everything that's been happening in the world this year, all I could think was, the early 1960s, planes were already a thing. Is no one concerned that someone's brought it over on a plane?
Right?
Or even a boat. Like, boats were definitely a thing.
Just somebody who's just traveling.
Yeah, I know. Like, it felt like a weird oversight to just like, because he's a scientist, the character, Vincent Price character of Morgan, and his friend, was it Ben? who also works with him. They're sitting debating this and they can't travel with wind, and there's rumors of people coming back as undead and they're calling them vampires, and Vincent Price is like, oh, what a lot of poppycock, there's no such thing. This is ridiculous. We see them working at the lab talking about it, and they're trying to come up with a vaccine and a cure and all the rest of it. And what's so funny is that later on Vincent Price actually has a story to explain why he thinks he's immune, and it's so like, just here's just a reason, you know. He's like, oh, I got bit by a bat
He's
once.
a scientist. If he says it's a reason, then we have to believe him.
I got bit by a bat once, and I can only suspect that the vampire bat already had the virus, but it was watered down in its bloodstream because it was immune, or because it could tackle it. And because it was already watered down, I only got a small part of it. It was weakened, so I got immune. And
Isn't that what vaccines are?
I guess technically, but he admits that he's just guessing. This is just guesswork, but it's the best he can do.
Yeah, either that or he was chosen, right?
And to every generation, there is a chosen one.
He is a vampire hunter.
I believe the term is Slayer of the Vampires.
Yes.
But of course,
Guillermo the Vampire Slayer. I need to stop bringing up shadows. I love that show.
Oh, it's so tempted to start talking about it, but I'm not going to. We're still on a topic here. We're not talking about what we do in the shadows. It's very good. His daughter gets sick, and they're both worried about it, of course, him and his wife, and they're, you know, concerned, and he's like, okay, don't tell anyone, because we see in the news that anyone who has the virus is just going to be disposed of. They have to burn them because that stops the spread of it.
Yeah, they just get thrown into a pit.
Which we actually forgot to mention, that he actually does literally still uses this pit. Like whatever vampire he kills, he takes to the pit and throws it in.
Yeah. He has to go car shopping, and he's like, I don't need a car, I need a hearse.
Actually, Joe, what's so funny is that the only thing that reminds me of I Am Legend in this movie, beyond just the general premise, is that in I Am Legend there is a scene where he goes to a car like dealership and gets a convertible. Like, and that, because he mentions that in this scene where Vincent Price is like,
a convertible would be nice.
yeah, but of course in the 2007 movie, there's a scene of Will Smith riding around in a red convertible around the empty streets of Manhattan, because of course there is. But that and one other thing, which I won't say because I don't want to spoil I Am Legend, because it's kind of a spoiler. So I won't tell you what the other element is. But yeah, so the virus is spread. I will say that the daughter's acting was a bit rough, especially when she was pretending to be blind, and she was clearly looking at everyone.
Yeah,
constantly.
Well, also they're being dubbed. Like, the only person in the movie that speaks English is Vincent Price, and everyone else is being dubbed. And the English dubbing.
Well,
I mean, how much
fair,
can you say is the kid, and how much can you say is the dub?
Well, because this was her eye line that was a problem. She's meant to be blind, and she's looking at people. But I mean, they're still speaking English. You can see them saying the same words. They're just badly overdubbed.
But the dubbing is by a different actor for all of them.
It doesn't look good. I mean, it looks really mismatched. Vincent Price is the only one who looks synced throughout the movie, which is very reminiscent of like the Clint Eastwood like spaghetti westerns and stuff like that. Right,
which I don't want to be too harsh on about, because I love those movies and I just kind of tolerate it.
Oh yeah, I wasn't really complaining about that. I was complaining about her actual acting, not the dubbing.
The kid didn't bother me too much. I mean, I've seen worse.
She's terrible. Just accept it. You call that acting?
She's fine at the birthday party.
I hope she quit. I hope she quit after this, because she should never have acted again. She's terrible.
Poor little Kathy.
She should go and learn some accounting or something. Or she should have done. Obviously, she's probably...
Sure, she's a fine teacher somewhere.
She's probably like 70 now, but it's a specific point. But yeah, she gets sick, and Vincent Price goes to work. There's no one there but his boss, because everyone else has just stopped coming into work because they're trying to protect themselves against the virus. He comes back, the disposal crews, I guess for lack of a better term, they have taken the daughter already and thrown her in the fiery pit. And Vincent Price like runs out, and he runs to the he's like, hey, like, you know, my daughter might be in there. Did you take her? Did you come from this street? And he's like, I don't know, but my daughter's in there too, so just accept it, man. Basically.
Dark.
Yeah, it is pretty dark. And he goes back, and of course his wife is starting to get sick, and eventually she has this sort of because the blindness is like a precursor to the final undead stage. Although the zombie vampires themselves aren't blind, from what I could tell.
No, no.
They're just blind before that.
It's just blind before death.
Vincent Price decides, though, that when his wife dies, he doesn't want to burn her in the pit. He's like, no, I'm going to save you from that horror. I'm just going to bury you in the backyard and we can leave it there. But of course, that very night, he hears, noises at the door and it's her. She's walking in going, Morgan. Morgan.
Just say Robert.
Is it Robert? Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Robert. Ratican. Right? Whatever. And that's kind of where the flashback chunk ends. And I know, like, we kind of I sped through kind of describing that, minus a tangent about Wayne's World, which will be on Patreon later. But there is but it was like it's like a good 35-minute chunk where I'm like, are we ever getting back to the to the main part of the movie? Like, what is this? But it does make sense that a lot of the runtime is flashbacks. I'm not surprised by that, but I was surprised that it was all in one big chunk in the middle. So.
Yeah.
It's weird. Again, having just watched Hellraiser Bloodline for streams, which also has a really weird structure from its like framing device and timeline, where it starts off in the future, cuts back
It's surprising
to
for a Hellraiser 4 that it wouldn't be like a really masterfully made film.
Well, it is directed, or it's credited as directed by Alan Smithy. So if you know your movies, you know what that means.
Yep. Good old Smithy.
This is a great bit. I know this is another tangent, but I have to ask, Tara, why don't you make a guess? Who do you think Alan Smithy is?
Well, obviously, Alan Smitty is the mind and behind one of the greatest franchises of all time. Of course, I don't need to say what it is. You already know.
I'm actually surprised you don't know this bit of trivia. Alan Smithy is not a real person. It's the name that used to get used when a director didn't want their name attached to the film because they wanted to disown it.
Okay.
They don't use it anymore because now people know what it is, so they don't want to use it. But this was notable for me because it was the first time I'd actually seen a film actually credited to Alan Smithy.
Okay, cool.
There you go. Bit of trivia.
I know.
There you know.
Yeah, that franchise I was talking about, of course, was Trancers.
So we come back to the present, and this is where the movie's plot actually gets going. And that sounds like an insult or a complaint, and I guess it is mildly, but not really. It's like it's kind of a weird thing.
The first act was like, this is his life, this is what he does, and like you see a full day of his routine, and then the next day he gets frustrated and like with his routine, and you see him sort of break down and then have this moment of weakness where he goes into memory lane and the flashback, and now we get where the movie, like, something else is being thrown at him instead.
Yeah. Was there a transition to the flashback at all?
A what?
A transition? Was there maybe an effect or a sound effect maybe? Oh dear.
I understand why you want me to say it.
Yeah, check out the Patreon bonus bit for why I made her do that there. So he encounters a dog, right? That's the thing. So he encounters a dog that is like, he's like, it's alive, it's an actual living dog. And he also encounters other, like, vampires who have been staked but not by him, and he's like, holy shit, there's people out here, there's someone else in the city. And it's worth mentioning as well, like, he does every day in the morning, like, go to his like ham radio and tries to, like, contact people. He's like, hey, broadcasting on this frequency, is anyone out there, blah blah blah. So he tries to chase the dog. It doesn't work though, but the dog eventually comes back later that night, and he's able to bring the dog in, and he's like, oh hey, I've got a dog, and he feeds it, and he's like petting it, but he sort of, like, notices like condensation and like blood on it, and he's like, this is kind of strange, like, what is this? And he goes and
because he's just cleaned them too, like he's given them a bath and wrapped up his wounds.
So he goes and checks the the microscope with a sample, and discovers that the dog's actually got the virus. The dog's infected. I mean, he's acting more or less normal, but he's got the virus. So it's got kind of a dark cut where it's like there's just like
he's got like this tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Like, you can't see what it is, but it's got a big old stake in the middle of it sticking out.
Yeah.
That he's burying. Like, no, he just killed the dog.
He just killed the dog. Yes. It was done as tastefully as I suppose.
It was done really fast. Like I found that if I don't know, I was missing the emotion from the scene. Like I know Vincent Price has been alone for 3 years and he's probably desperate for a companion, which is why he chases the dog and tries to look for him so hard.
This is a huge difference.
There's not a whole lot of like, oh, that sucks. And, you know, he finally got a companion and he loves this dog. Like, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a relationship between them before he had to, like, you know, kill him. I think it would have been awful for us to watch.
This kind of goes back to what I was saying a lot during 70s month, where it feels kind of like a prototype for this type of movie, but it doesn't necessarily nail all of the emotion that should come along with it. It just it feels like here's the beats that we have to get right, and they kind of work and the function, and that's it. Like,
yeah,
because
like any version of this in the modern day that would have had a dog in it would have been really emotional, and this one didn't have it.
Funny you say that.
Well, okay.
Because one of the things that's like really different, just remembering from seeing I Am Legend in the theaters, is that I Am Legend, like a big part of that movie is Will Smith like getting emotional because he's alone. One of the running things in that movie is he talks to a mannequin. Like every time he passes this mannequin, when he's going past the street, he always talks to it. And there's like a really like, say what you want about the rest of that movie, there's a really emotional scene where he sort of starts crying talking to the mannequin because the mannequin won't talk back, and it's really kind of heartbreaking. And yeah, the emotion is just not in this movie. Like the Last Man on Earth does not have emotion in it really, beyond a couple of key ideas, but you don't feel it really. It's not there. So I think that's a fair critique. I think it's a fair critique that, like, because even when he finds a human being, like, next, because he runs into this woman, who Ruth, or her name is, and she's scared at first and she runs away from him, and he comes like, no, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm not going to hurt you, like, hey, like it's dangerous out here, they're coming back, I've got a safe place, you know, come with me. And he is relatively excited, but again, it feels like he should probably be like almost breaking down and crying that he's finally seen a human being after 3 years. Like, oh my god, I'm not alone anymore. I'm not alone.
And it's a woman, and she's super hot.
He's still
an upgrade from the dog. I mean, not for me, but like for Vincent Price.
I mean, that's not a dark joke, but it's definitely a blunt joke. I'll say that much. But yes, technically yes. Although, to be fair, they never go down a creepy path. He never like, even implies that they have to repopulate the planet or anything like that. He just kind of like he's just happy to have a person to talk to. It never gets creepy.
Yeah.
But he still gets suspicious of her because she's acting kind of weird, and we see her like take this like drug. She's got like a syringe, and she sort of like takes it again. Basically, what's discovered after, because they talk about how the fact that they've both been married and they lost their families, and you know, compare notes and that kind of thing. We find out that she actually is kind of infected, and this is where it really gets to the idea of the movie, which is super interesting, to be fair. I think this is really fascinating, is that basically some of them are been taking this drug to sort of be more normal and be not like, you know, be smart enough and sort of be strong enough to like have a normal life, and they've got a community going. They're basically repopulating civilization, essentially.
Yeah, but they still function at night.
And they still function
during the day. They still are vampires, but they don't have as many like they're not like zombie vampires, you know.
Yeah.
They're more, I guess, like traditional vampires, except nocturnal humans.
Nocturnal humans, but they don't seem to need to actually. Well, they can still go out in daytime though, because the drug lets them do that.
Yeah, it lets them do that, but she still is weakened by things. Like she's not like she says their society still stays nocturnal.
Yeah,
because that's the whole point about why he's so scary, is because he's the daywalker.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I'm getting to, is that basically him going around killing all these people during the day, which is essentially when they're asleep in their beds, he's become something of a boogeyman to this smarter vampire community. And unlike other movies with vampires, the vampires in this movie are not presented as evil. They're not presented as anything like that at all. Which is why it feels like a weird thing to even call them vampires. It's almost like, I would have loved a little twist here that the things he's doing to protect himself are all based on cliches, and some of them aren't actually true. Like, you know, like it'd be a really cool little twist if like the garlic didn't do anything. Like the garlic was just an assumption that he made because of movies.
Right.
That'd have been an interesting idea if they implemented that. But So basically we find out that he is this myth, this legend, right? That's why it's called I Am Legend, because it turns out that he's the boogeyman. It's not them that's the boogeyman. The whole point of the story is that we find out that our main character is the villain, and that this society are the ones that fear him. So they're hunting him not because they're vicious, but because they want to protect themselves and because they want to stop his killing spree. And that's kind of the point, is that when and she kind of starts to care about him, because he cures her. He actually gives like a blood transfusion, and if it turns out that his blood can help cure others.
Yeah, it's some mixture of his blood and the vaccine that she already had. That he does like this medieval looking device that he uses while she's sleeping or knocked out or something. I can't remember. That she wakes up and is just normal human again.
Yeah, so she tries to like tell him to run, because like, you know, the forces show up, and they kill all the because this is the thing, they still kill the regular vampires and stuff, because we saw that earlier, you know, the bodies that were left, and we see it here again. They're still killing the regular zombie vampires that they're coming in encounter with. So, but they come. They've got some trucks. They've got guns, and they're coming for him. And you know, the last like 10 minutes of the movie is him like running. Basically, he runs into like a hospital or something like that, and like he's like creeping out the window, and he's running around, and it ends in a big cathedral where he ends up dying on like the altar. He realizes that he is the last man on Earth technically, because these people aren't humans like he is. They're a new breed or a new species. So he actually says that, you know, I don't know if it's quite gets the whole sentence out, but he essentially says the line that, you know, the title of the movie. He's like, "I am the last man," and he dies. Because I actually, the way he dies,
he calls them all freaks.
Is actually quite impressive, because one of the vampire soldier dudes actually like throws a spear at him and spears him from a distance.
Yeah. Just like a javelin.
Yeah.
Through the heart.
It was actually quite an interesting way to kill him off. But you know, he ends up, you know, he dies on the altar being held by, you know, this Ruth, who is like sort of apologizing, and this is the end of the movie. And look, this is a fascinating. I think the ideas in this movie are more fascinating than the implementation of them, which is to say,
well, there is one more line in the film, because there's a baby crying in the church or whatever it is, and she grabs the baby and she says, "It's okay, you're safe now." I think, you know, which I don't know, I don't really know how to interpret. Like, either that means you're safe because the boogeyman's dead, or you're safe now because her blood is now the super blood that could cure everybody. Or maybe it's both.
I took it as the boogeyman was dead, but you've got a point there. I mean, it could be that as well. Because I think it really treats him that way. Like, he realizes this, and it's not like he's unremorseful either. Like, when he finds out that some of the people he's killed by accident, he finds out that that some of them are smart and intelligent, and he's killed them in their sleep. He actually does say, "Oh, I didn't know." He looks a little bit upset by it. He's not like like, "Well, screw them, I'm going to kill them all anyway." So he's not unsympathetic. He doesn't just go into dick mode.
Well, he gets a little unsympathetic at the altar inside the church, because he just starts calling everybody freaks and like, "You're not human. You're unnatural. I'm the one that's human, and you're going to kill me." Like,
yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. Like, that's he doesn't come off as very sympathetic, but of course they don't come off either, like, because they're there just hunting him down with guns and spears.
Yeah. But maybe this is the dawn of the Planet of the Apes treatment, where we get sympathetic on both sides, and we understand why they're scared of him, we understand why he is fighting for survival. So when the conflict, we can be like, "Oh my god, I don't know who to root for. I don't know, like, I want them to just get along." Yeah, we could do some of that at some point. But no, I think the ideas are really fascinating. I love the idea, and I wish that it explored it more. The idea that he has become the vampire in their culture. He has become the one who sneaks into their beds at night. Yeah, that is actually wonderful storytelling, I think. And I don't know if any of the three movies really nails it completely. Like, they all have their faults, I think. So, and that's it. I don't remember Omega Man as much, so I'm looking forward to seeing that again. So we'll definitely do that maybe in a couple of months' time. And
sure, we just did a Heston film, so we should probably take a break.
That's true. And he does show up in the second Planet of the Apes briefly. So we'll see him again. But yeah, I mean, the movie, it's not like super interesting from a visual point of view, but it does. I mean, the The wide framing does look nice. You know, I appreciate the quality in that sense. You know, Vincent Price is a very enjoyable actor to watch and listen to, even if, although I do kind of agree that he doesn't necessarily bring the emotion to this role that it probably requires.
Yeah, he has a decent like breakdown scene when he's watching the home movies that is pretty effective, but there's plenty of other scenes that I think require emotion that is not there. And he's a great actor, so maybe it's the direction.
Yeah, it could be the direction. It could be that they just weren't going for this super emotional thing. They sort of treat it like he just takes things really well.
Yeah.
So I guess that could.
But if you can't get like sympathy for a dog dying in a scene, then I mean something's missing.
Something's wrong. I can get behind that. And I do actually like the title of the movie in the sense that it doesn't mean exactly what you think it means. I like that the end recontextualizes what the title actually does mean.
That's true.
And I do appreciate when movies do that, where you're like, oh, I thought it just meant this thing, this really simple idea, but no, it's actually this. So no, and I think what's interesting here, because me and Tim recently, it's not went out yet, but we did a movie called The Girl with All the Gifts from a couple of years ago, and that actually that was a zombie movie, but it had a very similar idea of like a new society taking over by the end, and the idea that the previous one was like determined not to let it go. So it was a kind of about the old establishment like refusing to let things change for the young establishment, and I think there's maybe an element of that in here. You know, I'm getting there's a small sense of that of like not even like in a mean way, but you know, Vincent Price is like clinging to the old world and not wanting to let go of humanity.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of getting that from his character in the beginning before I realized he was doing vampire stuff. Because in the beginning, like, okay, well, maybe he just has an alarm clock and he's just doing his daily routine just to try to keep some semblance of normal. Still makes tea and has his 3 meals and gets up with an alarm. I don't know, but so I at first I thought that was going to be part of the film.
I think it's there in a very minor way, like if you really read into it, but it's not like at the forefront of it. Whereas The Girl with All Your Gifts, I think at the end of the movie, like it really, like, no, that's the point of the movie at the end, is like that's really the themes that it's playing with. So, I mean, there's some themes in there, but you know, it's good, it's not great. And I think, and that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that, you know? I mean, I have this in a box set of like 7 Vincent Price movies, and as part of a box set that was, you know, fairly priced, it was a solid addition.
I think my favorite Vincent Price role is Egghead in the Batman series.
Now, for me, it's probably Ratican, but I do love House on Haunted Hill, the original. He's really good in that. He's kind of perfect in that. One. Yeah, that's a really fun one. Yeah, I like that a lot. He's got a bunch of fun movies though. The 50s, 60s, 70s Vincent Price is a fun batch. There's some stinkers in there, but he's got a lot of good stuff.
He's a great Batman villain.
Yeah. Stupid 60s Batman show.
Stupid. You're stupid. That show's great.
I like my Batman relatively serious, thank you very much.
Okay. There's Peter on his high horse again.
It's not a high horse, it's just my preference. Just my preference of Batman, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah. And besides, what do you mean on my high horse again? I thought the joke you liked was on my ivory tower. I thought that was the...
Well, you have to come in on your high horse, and then you get to your ivory tower.
Okay. All right. I'm glad we established that just for the future. Last Man on Earth is pretty good. It's not great. It's definitely feels again one of those proof of concept early examples of a genre that would maybe later be bested by other examples. But I mean, as a Vincent Price romp, I think it's got some stuff going for it, and the ideas are fun. So
yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, Tara, what would you rate it out of 10?
Yeah, it's good, not great. I didn't mind watching it. I liked a lot of what's here in the film. I was surprised by the fact that this came out before we had like a definition of the current day zombie, what we see in zombie films. So that was really interesting to just see. And yeah, good, not great. I'm going to give it a 6.5.
6.5. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking around that region. I was thinking that or a 7. I will go. I'll give it a 6.5. I really want to give it a 7, but I think the way it dumps all the flashbacks in the middle, just I think I have to take the extra half point off for that. It's really weird. It's really weird.
Yeah.
The structure is just odd, but I mean that's whatever. It's worth a watch. So if you like Vincent Price or you like checking out old movies like this, I think it's definitely a solid watch. Though I wouldn't.
Yeah, I agree.
Dissuade anyone from doing so. So there you go. That's The Last Man on Earth. This has been an extra episode. If you made it to the end of the review, if you made it this far, type. Type.
Egghead.
Okay, fine. Type egghead in the comments to let us know you got this far. Before I properly plug things, we'll do the little pose section. So Tara, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1. Say pose, then pose for the thumbnail. Make sure your head's not cut off. Me do it. 3, 2, 1. Pose.
I'm searching. Get it? You can work with that.
I can work with it. Yeah, I'll do something with it. Oh dear. So yes, you can of course let us know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Like is really important on YouTube. Lets the YouTube algorithm know that we're worth recommending out. So please do that. You can rate us on podcast services such as Apple Podcasts, but give it as a 5-star review. That helps us out a lot as well. You can get us on the Twitters at the Ace Podcast for updates and the occasional clip and things. So go do that. You can, of course, also support us on patreon.com financially for as little as $1 per month, as we mentioned earlier. So please go and have a look at that too. But otherwise, that is us. So yeah, there you go. So this has been an extra episode, so you get this in addition, which is it's a good thing that it's kind of an extra one because I feel like this one was especially tangenty. But I think that's because the plot of the movie is so relatively simple and straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially in the sense that the plot doesn't really start until like an hour in.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah.
It's a third act movie.
There's caveats to be had, but enjoyable enough to watch. But yeah, so that has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We do always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction, guys, and computer at Salsa.
I don't have anything prepared.